Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Cooper, and welcome to Creatively Classes. I'm so excited to start this educational series with my class on the power of mentorship using an intuition-based approach. So let me share my screen with you. We have lots to unpack, so bear with me as I share and share. I hope you can see this.
Looks great.
So we have, so to give some framework, in my class today, you'll learn how to assemble all the necessary pieces to make your career skyrocket. You'll learn the essentials of how to frame your success and the steps to assemble your own team who will advocate for you. You'll learn how to engage your intuition, what I call the inner compass. You'll gain insights on how to give and receive feedback. You'll also get real actionable steps you can take today to bridge many of the gaps and get your career in gear. And ultimately, you'll learn how to expand your vision and see your life through a new lens. But before we begin unpacking all of this, I'd first like to share my story. Because in sharing our stories, we gain perspective. And I hope you'll do so I'm hoping to do so by the questions and comments that I'll be adding at the end. And I hope that you'll stay around for our Q&A. So to kick off, I'd like to tell you a little bit about me and my own story. I was born in Columbia, South Carolina in 1965. I'm not ashamed to say, 1 year after the Civil Rights Act was signed. My parents, who learned from their parents, taught my brothers and me that whatever we chose to do in life, we had to be excellent, always, at all times. No excuses were ever doled out in our family as a whole, because they knew more than anything, being better was ultimately what it would require to succeed. My family, my cousins, we all got the same drill. And the key to success, aside from having an unwavering work ethic, was education. That's how my grandparents and my great-grandparents were able to make tremendous leaps forward that would set the groundwork for their family and their family's success. So I was one of those lucky kids who never had to figure out what I wanted to do in life. Fashion picked me. Drawing was my first love. And when I was about 12 or so, I was sketching complete collections. So my calling career-wise was not in the family business. So my parents struggled to advise me once my career started. So I had to seek mentors and advisors along the way, but I led that search using my own intuition and curiosity. For, I would say, almost my entire career, I'm sure many of you will identify, I have been the only one. I know this will resonate with people of color in the call, but hopefully with non-people of color as well, who have noticed this void in their workplaces. My goal today is hopefully inspire you to think about yourself in a different way, a new way. And I'm trying to share some tools and how to do that. So I'd like to show you my story with the hopes that the pieces will ultimately fit together. That's the goal, at least for today. So my story is one that's 100 years in the making. Please meet my grandmother, Ada Cooper. So Ada Cooper was born before her time. She's a woman of color from the South who graduated from Pratt Institute in 1922, a time when women in general had no higher degrees of education. She was ultimately the Southeast alumni representative for Pratt. She bought me my first sewing machine. She taught me how to draft patterns. She told me always trust your eye, never a ruler, because there's not one single straight line on the human body. And she was one of my first mentors. So I want to share something very special with you. I've never done it publicly before, so this is a first for me. It's an extraordinary document. I've been told only a single handful still exist. And in a few days, this document will turn 100 years old. So this is my grandmother's notebook from Pratt. And as you can see, matter of fact, I even brought it here. So in my little tiny thumbnail, you can see it. And at the top, it says, it says Ada Sawyer, room 24, Pratt Institute, Brooklyn, New York. And it's dated 1921, so she was still in school there. So that's a close-up of it. And this is her handwriting. And she's talking about a sleeve placket draft. And that's her little diagram that she, drew in her own fountain pen. And that's her little sleeve cuff placket sample. And those who are in fashion, who understand pattern making and pattern drafting, you'll know what that is. That is a sleeve. So that's to the left of the screen, that is the cap of the sleeve. And one thing that I thought was really quite interesting was the measurements for a skirt. So if you can look, the waist is 26 inches and the hip is 44 inches. And so I believe this was the time when corsetry was still happening. And so you can really see the difference between the waist hip ratio of 26 to 44 inches. So we would see that as like a really, exaggerated shape. These are more patterns of hers that are in her notebook. The top one is what we call a bitus. So that's the shoulder sloping, the roundness of the armhole, the sleeve at the bottom. And then her, which I believe are like either 8th scale little pattern slopers that are in her book, made out of cardboard. So another very compelling story that I wanted to share with you. So my grandparents had a house out at the beach in South Carolina. And by this time, I'm, let's say, about 13 years old. And a cousin of mine told me about the school called Parsons School of Design. Of course, I knew about Pratt, but I didn't know about Parsons. And she said, I think you would be interested in Parsons and you should look into it. So my mother reached out to the school and said, I have this child, he's sketching, all of these, collections, etc. What do we do with him? We're in Columbia, South Carolina. And they said, send us examples of his work. And so we did, and mind you, this is the pre-digital age. So this is, pre-PDF, pre-email. We just put it in a box and we mailed it off. And a few months later, she got a call from the school and they said, we love Martin's work. We'd love to have him at our college credit summer program. And Mom said, great. And then it sunk in, and she shared with the chair of the department at the time. She said, Martin's only 14. And she said, he's only 14. And she said, yes, he's only 14. And so they negotiated And ultimately, I was allowed to attend Parsons that summer. It changed my life. I thought I was so creative and so unique, and I was sketching and keeping sketchbooks and all of this stuff. And then I go to New York, and I'm now in class, as a 14-year-old, and I realized that everyone else was doing exactly the same thing. And so for me, that was one of these wonderful life affirmations that when you follow your intuitive inner compass, it guides you in the right way. And so you may say, this guy is destined to do this. And that may be the case with me. We all have our own story and entry point. But I know plenty of people who I've worked with over the years whose story is the opposite of mine. My head of menswear at Belstaff, for example, was trained as an opera singer. So there's always hope. Just because you hear my story doesn't mean that yours has to be the same. So why Martin? When I'm presented with an opportunity, I always ask myself, why Martin? I know it sounds strange, but when you know who you are and what value you're offering, decisions become easier to make in the face of opportunity. Because what may look like an opportunity may not always be. And so with my story, I want you guys to, if you see this, that is me. This is my senior year at Parsons. I'm in the Norman Norell room, which is on the top floor. And I'm looking, and so that's me. And I'm about 21 years old. And this is a moment captured in time that would actually change my life. The gentleman with the glasses to the right, can you guess who he is? That guy. He's Calvin Klein. He's my senior critic at Parsons. And he's looking at my sketches. And those are the sketches that he's looking at. So I did this 2 denim coats with beaver collars for him. And I ultimately ended up working for Calvin for a few years. So I started a few years ago to see the connection points and how I arrived at where I am today. This is an exercise I'd love for you to do. I want you to start thinking about it in your own orbit. Like, who are the people who are around you that you know? They can be colleagues, bosses, family, or friends. Start mapping them out like this. One of the most important first steps in this journey is to know what. So one of the most important things is to know what assets you have. So get it down on a sheet of paper with you at the center. The purpose is to create a psychological map to navigate through your life. And to do that, the best compass, which is already within you, is intuition. So things to think about. What's your story? Who helped spark your journey? Where do you want to go? How will you get there? If you're building your career, you're going to need help. So who's looking to build their career? Raise your hand. I'm sure many are out there. No matter how good you are at your job, you can't sit around waiting to be noticed, especially in an environment that may not want to notice you. So in the old days, we were told to keep our head down, deliver great work in the hope that someone will notice you. In my, alma mater, who, that I love dearly, Parsons, we were told the same thing. And that language went something like this: say nothing, listen and learn. And I'm sure there's probably some virtue in there. Let your work speak for itself. And it's your job to hand pins to the designer, the pattern cutter, and the fitting. That paradigm doesn't work for everyone. And it doesn't work especially if you are Black or brown. Why? Because no one will notice that you were ever in the room. It's not how the world works today. You must promote yourself and find others who are willing to speak up on your behalf. Sometimes you may hear it like this: you must control your own narrative, right? And if you don't write it, someone else will. That's another way of saying it. Many of you have been fortunate enough to learn this on your own, but for BIPOCs, humility in this way will not serve your greater purpose. I believe that the fashion industry is a very complex landscape to navigate on one's own. Taking race off the table for a moment is complex at best. Landmined with these very complex personalities. Someone said, life is more like high school than college. Guess what? They were right. And at least for a designer, the currency is based in something that is so elusive, and that's taste and personal opinion. So what you deem as right, someone else may not. So who gets their way? How do you get heard? How do you be seen? And when you add back the layer of race, that creates other nuanced complexities that must be considered. So having said all of that, the ray of light is here. And that is that successful leaders know and work under one assumption: that nothing important gets done alone. Remember, the world's greatest athletes all have a coach. And why shouldn't you? So building a support group around you is not only key to your success, it will be essential to your success. In 2001, so I'm going to just move on, hang on. So in 2001, there's a guy, David Brown. He wrote an article for Harvard Business Review called Race Matters: The Truth About Mentoring Minorities. And so the study was comprised of African American, Asian, and Hispanic American executives. And guess what? Some minorities excel. Why? And I quote, and you can see it on the screen, we can read it together. Even though the minority executives were not on an obvious fast track, influential mentors were investing in them as if they were, which helped prevent them from either rationing down their work performance or simply leaving the organization, which sadly is most often the case. They concluded that the people of color who advance the furthest all share one thread: a strong network of mentors and corporate sponsors who nurture their professional development. So that's the end game, guys, spelled out. So the goal is simple. We know what we're working toward. Now let's map out that landscape so you'll know who's who. And as a side note, for brands who are on the call, this is your heads up as to where you can focus your attention. So I repeat, for BIPOC executives to be successful in your organization, you need a strong network of mentors and corporate sponsors who will nurture their professional development. Now, finding a mentor is a great step, but there are others who you'll need to assemble around you to flesh out your own personal ecosystem, your team. So let's call them the career boosters. Career boosters can come in your life at any time, in any order. And you may have one of them or all of them or none of them at certain periods in your life. The goal, obviously, is to have as many in your life at any given time. So let's have a look. But before we do that, we have to set one ground rule. In order for any of this to work, you have to be really good at what you do. And you have to shine and deliver high quality work. If you don't, it won't work. My BIPOC people out there know this all too well. You have to be 3 times as good. It's unfortunate, but true. So let's first understand the lay of the land by starting with mentors. Mentors tend to be more experienced leaders, acting as a role model to a less experienced protege, imparting their knowledge and expertise. Mentors help you develop a skill. They can be found within or outside your organization at any level in the hierarchy and any age. They don't have to be older, they can be younger. They just need to be better at the skill than you are, whether that's something technical or an aspect of leadership. A mentoring relationship is a safe space where you can share your concerns and vulnerabilities. A mentor's goal is to see their mentees succeed. It's very simple. That's their level of investment. They want to see you succeed. And they are more personally motivated than politically motivated. People who are mentored garner more promotions, higher salaries, and more career satisfaction than those who are not. Mentors generally operate behind the scenes. This is an important distinction that we'll talk about later. And sometimes the best mentors never even know you're their mentee. You're just watching, observing, learning all the time from them. Again, just being intuitive. So find a mentor by identifying someone whom you want to learn, asking them to teach you that specific skill, and committing to listening and learning. So the next piece are advocates. Advocates bridge the gap between mentors, sponsors, and colleagues. Advocates do a lot of what mentors do, such as give solid advice and guidance, but they can offer so much more. One major difference between mentors and advocates is that the advocate's role is inherently public in nature. They stick their necks and reputations out there for you in a way that mentors can't or don't. They know and respect your work in depth. When they give you their stamp of approval, they make their support of you highly visible. And they create career traction for you. For example, they'll help facilitate that stretch assignment to get you seen and rewarded. And by doing that, they help expand the perception of what you can achieve. They connect you to senior leaders, and as I mentioned, make you visible. And they can also connect you to career opportunities. Since they have firsthand experience with your work ethic and your performance, it gives them instant credibility when speaking about you. They help you get credit for your work. Advocates are incredibly influential and can move pieces on the chessboard for you in a way that mentors can't. They're very, very powerful. But many talented people are way too slow in cultivating a relationship with an advocate. They're trusting in the universe that the right advocate will appear at the right time in their career and sweep them off their feet, meaning they're leaving it all to chance, or that they limit themselves to a single advocate, or they don't aim high enough in the relationship they cultivate. And remember, the relationship should be at least at the level where you want to get to. So for example, if you want to be a VP, your network should be VPs. This is helpful when you're having your, say, your performance review. If no one knows you, or your boss is the only one at the table advocating for you, chances for that promotion start to dim. However, when you have 3, 4, 5 leaders around the table advocating for you, you've created a greater chance of getting that promotion or pay raise. And sponsors often find potential proteges through their advocates. So the next piece, let's talk about sponsors. So a major difference in your relationship with a mentor versus a sponsor is that in the mentor-mentee relationship, the mentee is driving the agenda. The mentee is calling the mentor, saying, I need help. Whereas with a sponsor, they're constantly seeking and directing opportunities toward you to leverage your talents and contributions in a greater capacity. Of the career boosters, sponsors are the door openers, bringing exposure to you so that you can be seen on the bigger stage. Sponsors provide exposure, visibility, and experience through opportunity. This is something mentors generally can't do. Because of their rank in the organization, they have incredible clout. They can make the case for your advancement and make you seen and heard when you're not there, because they're sitting at the table having discussions that can make or break your career. They can align your skills with projects that you may not even be aware of or involved in, for that matter. They connect and plug you in. A sponsor can make or influence a hiring decision, placing you on the next rung of your career ladder. But sponsorship is a transactional relationship, but mutually beneficial. If I do this for you, then you will do that for me. And we have an old wise friend who says, fair exchange is no robbery. And that is certainly the case here. They help you, you must help them. So by definition, there are at least 2 steps up the hierarchy from you, or perhaps more. The sponsor invests their political capital in helping your career. In return, and this is a transactional part, you must deliver. This is where the you really have to be good at what you do part comes into play. There's no escaping it. In essence, sponsors get someone they trust to do the work on their behalf. Successful sponsors also develop a reputation as spotters of top talent. So some of you on the call may be in the position of being a sponsor. The sponsoring relationship is about the sponsor's success as much as your career advancement. So I'm going to repeat that. The sponsor's relationship, or the sponsoring relationship, is about the sponsor's success as much as your career advancement. It's transactional, and you have to deliver and be good at it. Sponsors help increase company retention as well. And lastly, you can't ask someone to sponsor you. Your work and your advocates must bring you to their attention. But having said that, it's my belief that companies need to bring sponsorship into the open and train all high-level executives on sponsorship. They should reward sponsorship. Those who sponsor the unrepresented should be recognized as positive contributors to the organization. When these three essential assets come into your life at the same time, mentor, advocate, sponsor, magic can happen. Doesn't mean that it will happen, but the odds are so incredibly stacked in your favor. See it as an alignment of the stars. Be purposeful in bringing these people in your life, and that they demonstrate the skills and opportunities that align with your needs. Connect with them and start setting your life in motion. But guess what? As you can see, the circle is not complete. There's a fourth layer. And when the fourth layer is in play, it's the stardust that binds your entire ecosystem together. And that's called allyship. For BIPOC people, allyship is the fuel in the rocket. It's the propellant. Allies will play a huge role in the equation of your journey and the success of your career. And when we do the math and look at the numbers, the reasons are quite compelling. Okay, so bear with me. Black people only make up, and this is the hard math. Black people make up only 16% of the US population. Some people say 15% is, I think, more like 16%. We're labeled minorities for a reason. And what I'm about to explain is really an informal survey to illustrate a point. And it's not 100% fact-based, but you'll get it. So I think in fashion, that percentage number is much lower. Based on observation, I think that it's probably even less than 1%. So if it's 1%, for every one BIPOC person, that means there are 100 non-BIPOC people. And if it's 0.5%, that means that if there's one BIPOC person, there are 200 non-BIPOC people. And that's how we arrive at that all too familiar phrase, you're the only one. So when you look at the numbers that way, you can understand why. So in order for this to take off like the rocket, the majority must help, support, and advocate for the minority. In other words, and here's the real guys, no matter how hard we try to initiate change or how many mentor-mentee strategies I share with you, we can't do it alone. There cannot be any meaningful systemic change without our ally partners carrying our water for us. Until we can beef up the talent stream coming into the industry and increase that percentage I just spoke of, we will need to lean on, partner, and walk hand in hand with our non-BIPOC friends. This is where allies on the call should perk up. So many may say, what can I do? Or I don't know how to help. Here are some suggestions. The majority must help, support, and advocate for the minority. Small action equals big impact. Provide BIPOCs access to things which you may take for granted. For example, people or resources. Is it a phone call to a close colleague to say, I'd appreciate you taking 30 minutes of your time to have a chat with this person. She's super smart, talented, etc. Take interest in someone in your organization and let them know you want to see them succeed. Show them that caring matters. Because when you make someone feel good, they go out in the world and do good. But everyone can be an ally. Privilege comes in many forms. Men can be allies to women. White women can be allies to people of color. Cis people can be allies to members of the LGBTQI plus community. Those of able body can be allies to those with different abilities. Even economically, those who are privileged can be allies to those who are not, and so on. So use your power for good. When I was at Parsons, I want to say it was my junior year at Parsons, the chair of the department at the time, Frank Rizzo, brought me into his office and he said, there's someone I want you to meet. He's a menswear designer. His name is Jeffrey Banks. And of course I knew Jeffrey Banks. He said, Jeffrey is looking to hire someone to do illustrations for him. Here's his address. Go to his office and talk with him. Jeffrey's a African-American menswear designer, someone who has remained in my life. I was first introduced to Jeffrey when I was about 20 or 21 years old. And today, Jeffrey is one of my mentors. And mentorship never ends. You know, people who are important in your life never end. And so for me, this is where the CFDA's impact initiative comes into play with our partnership with Creatively, because now the industry can no longer say, we don't know where to find you. So get your CV up, you know, get a great headshot, click and upload great visual content about yourself, and let's get ready to rock and roll. So these are just some screenshots of impact by the CFDA. So let's get back to the discussion. What do I mean by carrying your water? I want to know if anyone caught that. Look, water is heavy, it swishes around, it splashes, it's messy, and it can be backbreaking. An ally must be willing to carry your water, or in other words, to carry your concern or your agenda. And it's okay if they're willing to carry it only part of the way. Remember, people will always tell you who they are. Any ally will be making personal choices whether to carry your water or push your concern or agenda every step along the way. Know that. So let's pivot for a moment. We now know the lay of the land and all the essential players who must come together to propel your career. Let's go back to that Martin at a glance map we saw in the beginning of the talk. So I hope you remember this. So these people, you know, from a Rosemary Bravo to a Calvin to Christopher Bailey, who was my boss at Burberry, these in fact are my allies, my mentors, my sponsors. And I'd like for you to start seeing your own life in this visual way. So look through your own network. Who are your advocates? Who are your mentors? And who could be sponsors? Because together they will help bridge the gaps and build your dream career. So we're going to move on to intuition. So the first thing is that BIPOC people are already inherently intuitive by nature. That's a skill that's been honed in the making for 400 years. Intuition allowed us to survive in the most adverse circumstances. And when we listen to our inner compass, we're really good at it. And we all have it. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, people will always tell you who they are. That's actually the easy part. Rarely will you ever have to figure that piece out. However, managing a relationship with them, now knowing who they are, requires navigation, skill, and guess what? Intuition. Mentors can help you see the blind spots. That's a great way to use mentors. But intuition must be a commitment. It must become part of you. It must become your life compass. Because without intuition, you end up listening to too many voices, and that's probably not a great thing. It will start to sound like a lot of radio stations playing in your head at the same time. Use intuition as your filter, that life compass. Intuition ultimately is knowing what you need. So another interesting story that I'll share, when I was a senior at Parsons, I started working for a 7th Avenue designer who was in the 550 building, major designer at the time. And in those days, the entire business unit was on one floor. So you had design, you had sales, you had production, you had cutting and shipping. And I went to the heads of each department and asked, can I hang out with you one day a week for a month? Can you show me what you do? And within 8 months, I had a really comprehensive understanding of every business function under that roof and how those functions fit together. But no one told me to do that. I led with my intuition and inner compass. And incidentally, that same designer was kind enough to write one of my recommendation letters to the admissions board of the CFDA when I was applying for membership. She had been my boss, but over the years, she had become my mentor, my advocate, my sponsor, and my ally. So feedback. The biggest misconception with people is that they often take feedback as something negative. And that's not what it's meant for. We all have blind spots, and feedback helps us to become aware of those blind spots so that we can be more productive. So my thoughts on how to give and receive great feedback are generally, number one, honesty is sacrosanct. Without honesty and transparency, it's really not a relationship. You're not really in a dialogue. Your goal is to create a platform where you can have dialogue as equals. I cannot stress this enough, especially for BIPOCs in conjunction with sponsors and allies. We should always aim to have dialogue as equals. And in my opinion, feedback goes both ways. So they also must, or it's two-way, either you give or you receive, or suggest actionable steps. Feedback without solutions can be just hot air. So we need the actionable steps to make something right. And never feel the need to defend yourself. Just absorb it, take it in. And in giving feedback, I always lead with a positive and end with a positive. Place the criticism or opportunity, if you will, in the middle. So as we begin to kind of like wrap up and come around the corner, you may be saying, well, I don't know anyone. What can I do? You have to get out there and connect. One can't pour from an empty cup. I think it's something like 70 or 80% of all jobs, one learns from someone they know. So logic says that you have to place yourself in the stream of conversations with people who know. Sometimes it's called networking. I call it maybe just being friendly. These relationships grow organically. So in the most basic and simplest first step, reach out to someone who can get you just one step closer to your goal. That's it, just one step. That's all it needs to be to take that first step. Be sure to leverage the power of creatively. This is a great next step. You're already here and signed in. Start connecting with others like you on the platform. Again, if you want to be a VP, your network should be at the VP level. Next is a very interesting concept, and that is to build your own personal board of advisors. So when I was younger in my career, we had a group of friends and we called ourselves the family. And everyone knew who the family was. If we said, oh, we're going out to dinner, who's coming, the family, we knew who was going to be at the table. What the family was, so there was myself in fashion, my wife Karen, who was in fashion and accessories, our friend Matthew, who is a celebrity photographer, our friend Sam, who's a celebrity makeup artist, our friend Scott, who is a business leader, our friend Gina, who's a model. And when we had, an issue that we wanted to discuss, we brought it to the family, and everyone sat around the table and weighed in. So you don't have to wait for this ecosystem to get around you. Start building your own family. So for mentees, some of the best mentors, as I mentioned earlier, don't even know that you're mentoring them, but they're easy to identify. Mentors are easy to identify. And the secret is that they're all around us, sharing knowledge with us all the time. Use your intuition to see them. So they lead by example, they teach by example, they nurture by example. We all know those types of people within our organizations. For mentors on the call looking for mentees, please reach out to the CFDA and ask how you can become an impact mentor. So I'm going to end my screen sharing. And I know there are a lot of you out there who are struggling to make your career happen. The pandemic has certainly been a career killer for many of us, and my heart goes out to you. For anyone on the call who's saying, thank you, but nothing new here, my reply would be, put these points in practice, walk the walk, and I promise you doors will open, but you must put in the work. Find mentors, advocates, and sponsors, and of course, allies. Do not leave it up to the universe or chance. Take control of your life now. And on that note, I'd love to open it up for Q&A and take some questions.
Hey, Martin, we have a couple of questions for you based on this incredible presentation. The first question is from Gregory. He asks, what's the best way to give back to a sponsor?
Do the work, deliver the work. That is moving one's career. You must deliver. There is no career without delivering. I would be very clear about what those deliverables are so that you meet or surpass their expectations. And that's the communication, that's the dialogue back and forth. That is that is the currency, that your deliverable is the currency that you're trading in.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Another question we had is from Terrence, and he asked, what are ways of encouraging and helping the Black community that are passionate about fashion, but do not have the resources to attend fashion schools?
I think you have to decide and be clear at what level you wish to be in fashion. And, we always have a tendency to think that fashion means design, and fashion doesn't always mean design. So we have merchants in the ecosystem, we have product developers in the ecosystem, we have salespeople in the ecosystem. We have supply chain people in the ecosystem. What do you want? And then put the steps in motion. If it's supply chain, start pulling in people within your network using Creatively or LinkedIn to start engaging in dialogue with them. I'd love to have a 15-minute conversation with you. Tell me what you do. I'd love to learn.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Another question we had is from Simone. She asks, is there any difference within these suggested steps for those of us who seek to grow our own business?
Yeah, so the model works the same if you're an entrepreneur. So you're going to need the same ecosystem around you to help push that business forward. And that may look like a mentor who is an entrepreneur, so they can help bend the learning curve of, let's say, e-commerce, or can help bend the learning curve of supply chain, finding a factory to make whatever it is that you want to make, or the head of sales at a major brand who can perhaps introduce you to retailers. So it's all the same. Again, you have to be able to deliver quality work. So if it's a salesperson who you want to bring into your ecosystem, and they in turn introduce you to a store, number one, you have to have product that the store wants to sell, and then you have to be able to deliver that product on time. So those are your deliverables.
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah.
Another question we received is from Rahina, and they asked, as a student with no prior experience or knowledge of fashion background, but with an interest of breaking through in the industry, how should I start asking for mentorships and looking for internships?
Find people in Creatively. We are starting to have conversations about formalizing a process to marry mentors and mentees together. And so I know that is very kind of active in the mind space of our work, being a founding member of the Black Advisory Board of the CFDA. But again, you do your own work, which means networking. It means getting on Creatively. It means reaching out to people on LinkedIn, initiating conversation. I find typically people like to talk about themselves. And if you say, walk me through a day, a moment in your day, what do you do? Share with me, your approach. How did you start? What would be your advice for me? And once you ask those questions, people tend to, have a tendency to just kind of they're like wind-up dolls, and they just have a tendency to speak.
Agreed. Another question we received is, and this is a little bit more granular, but how often should I be communicating with my mentor? I think the question is really about, the fine line between being pleasantly persistent and also potentially being annoying.
So, I always say that the relationship between mentor and mentee is full transparency. And, many of my mentors have said to me, they use this phrase, warts and all. So you tell them the highs and you tell them the lows. You will establish that rapport with them, that you will know if your mentor is engaged or not. At a point in my career, I was matched with a mentor, and she changed my life, literally. And I remember, the woman who was telling me about it, she said, I think you're ready to, for that next level, and we want to partner you with someone who can help you navigate the landscape. And then she said, if you don't feel a connection in 5 minutes, keep it moving. And so it's the same thing. What is that? Intuition. Intuition is saying, do I connect with this person or not? And if I do connect, I know that, I feel that. they are engaged as much as I am engaged. But also know that the way that the physics of the relationship works is that the mentee is driving that relationship, whereas an advocate or a sponsor, they are driving that relationship. They are pushing you.
Amazing. Thank you for that. We have a couple more questions. One is, what was the best advice that you ever received from a mentor?
Best advice, super easy. Best advice is hard to do, is follow your gut. Follow your gut, which is your intuition. What is that inner compass saying to you? What is that pull you're getting in your stomach that either says yes or no? Move forward or step backward. And it doesn't have to be shades of gray in there. It's very cut and dry. Is this good for me or not good for me? Use your intuition. It will never let you down. Trust me, never. Every time you do not listen to it, that's when problems happen.
Great response. We have two more questions for you. One is from Joanna, and she asks, as a fashion student still in school, is it beneficial to have a mentor or advocate or sponsor first?
I think people are constantly floating in your life. And so I don't think, there's no chicken or egg here. You need, so if that's the case, like if you're going to school, then that ecosystem becomes those who are within the school system, your teachers, your instructors, et cetera, those who are connecting you with the industry or the outside world from school. So I think, listen, my grandmother was my first mentor. My mother was my mentor. When I arrived in New York City at 14 years old, my teacher, who was, one of the only ones who knew that I was only 14, remained my mentor. I stayed in touch with her my junior year in high school, my senior year in high school. Again, this is pre-digital. We were like pen pals. I applied to school eventually, to go to college. I only applied to Parsons, got into Parsons. My junior year, this woman, Marie Essex, became my teacher again, but we've known each other since I was 14. She was the one who paired me with Calvin. She was the one who got me a seat on the board of governors at Parsons when after I graduated. She indirectly introduced me to my wife, Karen. So you're going to have these people who float in and out of your life. I think the biggest mistake, and this happens in my world a lot because I talk to a lot of young people, and that is they do not follow up. They don't follow up. And for, perhaps a host of reasons, perhaps they feel that, oh, Martin, you're so busy, blah, blah, blah. I will take, generally speaking, almost every call. If I have the bandwidth to do it, I'll take a call. That's my obligation to the people who are coming up behind me. And I'm sure there are people on this call now know that I will take a phone call in a heartbeat. But keep it up. I often find that it's one phone call. It's quite vague and broad. How do I start? If you want to build a relationship, make that commitment to be in a relationship.
Amazing. Thank you, Martin. The last question that we have for you is from Anna. Yep. She says, how do we keep up with more information on the resources available through the Impact Initiative?
That's a great question. So we just launched Impact a month ago or so. Perhaps here on the Creatively platform or at CFDA.com, where we'll be posting more things. And of course, the goal is to really build a meaningful network where not only can talent connect, but brands to talent can connect. And so it's our goal that opportunities are made manifest here, but also relationships and community is built here as well.
Amazing, thank you. And I'll drop in some email addresses and other handles that you guys can also follow to get notifications of any new updates for Impact. And I think that's it, Martin. Do you have any closing thoughts for everyone before we wrap up?
Well, I want to give, first of all, a huge thanks to everyone who joined today, including the wonderful Creatively team and Impact by the CFDA. You can find me always on Martin Cooper _NYC, which is my Instagram feed, and be sure to follow you guys as well, Creatively at Hello Creatively. Tag us and let us know what you've learned. And until the next time, I look forward to hearing about everyone's progress.
Thank you so much, Martin.
My pleasure. Always, always. Good luck, guys. Bye.